don't mean get better, but that was a great presentation. Business God's way. That's what we're here about. Maybe you think this is an interesting image, but for me, I look at nature as God's business. I think that is what God, in His infinite wisdom, designed nature to be. It is a pattern. It is an example. And I will suggest to any of us that Paul talked about divine order last night, and it runs through his book, Nehemiah People. And I feel this is an extremely important divine order with God, is that of design. Everything is structured around by God of design. We're all uniquely designed. We're one of a kind. Look at the various leaves. Go look at the design of leaves. And I will submit and I will suggest that everything we do in our businesses and our lives revolves around design, because out of design comes net profit. Not necessarily money, but gain, net gain. And so any design issue, Bill was talking about in the IT world, lots of design issues. Everything design issue that you need or you want to come up with, it is in nature. God has placed it there for us kings to go and sons to go find, to be curious, wonder. This is probably a little different from most people's view of God's business. Doing business God's way is in nature. I'm fortunate that I live in the mountains in western North Carolina. My wife and I hike. She's probably upset with me because I'm here Saturday and Sundays, we hike. I mean, this is not walking along a straight path. But we look into, she's a nature photographer, we look into God's business. But that God, I've learned, has taught us or designed us to think in images. And when I think of doing business God's way, nature is my image. What is your image? Next, Paul. Doing business God's way or business God's way, it's for all of us. We're all in God's business. It's God and sons. We're in a family business, and we're all interconnected as nature is. Next one, Paul. And it is, I submit to you, a franchise business. I call it, and I've tried to get the URL for this. They wouldn't let me do it. But I call it franchise.god. But we are in a franchise business. Most of us understand and know what a franchise business does, how it operates. There's systems, there's ways that they operate to make things more effective. The processes, the systems are meant to reduce the risk and raise the probability of success. And I submit to you that God is saying the same thing with us. He's saying, son, daughter, if you just follow my ways that I have placed in your heart through my written word, and Bill did a great job of this, and CUNY does a great job. Listen, what is God saying to you personally? And he's saying it in nature. If you follow my ways, you will be successful from my point of view. You will have all you want and more. You'll have to excuse me a little bit. I'm used to, when I do this, I've got the control. And CUNY sprung this on me the other day and said, what? We got to do this? So I apologize for a little inconvenience. Next one, Paul, please. Oh, okay, we're at divine order. When Paul shared his book, Nehemiah People, with me several years ago, one of the things that in going through the manuscript that stuck out, really stuck out, is over and over and over, divine order. So I've really caught on to this. Most of us today, we use, I'll call it dashboards. You look at the dashboard of a car. You look at the dashboard of your computer, your iPhones or phones, smartphones, and you have settings, default settings. And I would suggest to us all, if you don't have default settings, if you don't have a mental, spiritual, physical dashboard, and I call it the dashboard of life, then I think we're kind of off base. And so there's 6, for me, core God's principles that I incorporate in my life. I think about it every morning. I pray about it. I recalibrate. Some of you are probably a little too young to know this, unless they still make them. They have this, you can write on it, you pull it up, and it goes away, the writing goes away, Etch-a-Sketch. So that's what I do every morning, and I hope y'all do too. It's a new day. We're totally new. So I recalibrate with these principles, and I hope you do the same. And my first one is divine order. First things first. Matthew 6:33. We see it. And today, many of us are seeking after significance. We want pleasure to avoid pain. We want fulfillment. And God is saying, hey, that will come, but divine order first. It'll come as you seek me. It'll come as you put me first in your business, in your family, in your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual lives. Next one, Paul, please. Sacred mission. To whom much is given, much is required. God has recently been dealing with me regarding this particular dashboard item, I'll call it, principle, is that Larry, he's telling me every morning, you're treating your wife, you're treating your home, you're treating this as common. Other people, every one of us is sacred. Everything, every breath, everything that God created is sacred. And I suggest that if we are treating it as common, then we are unplugging ourselves literally from the source of power, from the source of strength, by treating anything from God as sacred. So for me, I'm on a path of attempting everything, every breath, every moment is now as sacred. And you're keeping yourself plugged into the real power. Next one, Paul, please. Wholehearted devotion. No one can serve 2 masters. I'm sharing with you maybe it's idiosyncrasies, but my own view of some of these to help, hopefully you will not pick up mine and take it with you. If you do, that's okay if it's meaningful. But ask God, where are you? Where does he want you to be with him on some of these principles and your own principles? Today is an extremely, in my opinion, distractful economy. Attention is at a high level. And I believe for me, God has gotten my attention regarding this particular principle. I've learned my lessons. I'll be watching TV and my wife will be talking to me. How many of you had this happen? And she'll take my, Larry, I'm over here. So now, if she starts talking, she started talking during a football game the other day. And I know a little bit about football. I'm fortunate to have played and have some interest in it. And it was a critical situation in a game last Sunday, I think it was. So I turned the TV off and listened and, saved the marriage. But this is a big deal, guys. Are we there with people? Are we there with that special project that we're working on? Have we closed the door? We turned the phone off? It's special. If we're in work, especially, is to devote our full attention to what is right in front of us. Next one, Paul, please. Live loved. Let unconditional love govern all you do. Quickly on this one, if we look around at nature, which a lot of people, especially like somewhere like Jacksonville or wherever, I came out of Houston and moved up here, are not as fortunate as I am and get out in it all the time. But even look at our bodies. Look how unique. My wife's a animal whisperer. We got deer and all. I mean, it runs. She spends an hour or two every morning feeding all the critters that it's all natural coming in. And Larry, I'll get to you later. Got to feed the deer and the squirrels and the birds and the foxes and the whatever. But look how wonderful, uniquely designed and how things flow. And so from that point of view, I'm suggesting strongly, we lived love. God loves us. And when we live loved, we can get up every morning, pull up the Etch-a-Sketch, and then love our living. How many of us really love our living? We do that because of not out of compulsion, not out of commandment, but out of, I think, 1 John 4:18, because he loved us and he wants us to desire him more and more and more. So then we live loved, love living, and live loving everybody else and everything. So next one, Paul, please. Relationships are the key to God. Bill was talking about, and I loved your talk, Bill. I've been there, done that, and relationships are extremely messy, but they're part of life. But I believe he wants us to not run and hide from them, as we have a tendency to do, but to get involved. If you look at nature is very innate, very organic. They don't have generally the will that we have to change things, to make decisions, but they coexist. They're interrelated. They're interdependent. And we are called to be that too, irregardless if we like it or not, irregardless if we accept it or how we feel. If we live loved like Jesus loved us and paid the price. He was so vision-oriented, mission-oriented. He didn't, he endured, he endured it all. And if we're going to do business God's way, if we're going to be an example, that is a huge part of that process. Next one, Paul, please. I think we're on track, yeah. Pursue your purpose. People perish without a purpose. I've been involved in a couple of groups this past year with the express idea of understanding our purpose, of drawing that out of our hearts. Psalm 47, Psalm 139:16, Ecclesiastes 3:11. It talks about what God has written on our hearts. This scroll, are we living it? Do we know what it is? can we articulate that in a sense of being able to explain it, say it to somebody. In this exposure to purposefulness of how we're living, especially from my standpoint, from a standpoint of our work, and I had not enough time to go into really what I do so much, but I'm involved with cash flow, looking at the internal aspects of a business. If you think about a car mechanic, I'm a business mechanic. I live inside the engine. We all have in our businesses economic engines, or the business that you work for. I work inside that. My hands are greasy looking at the cash flow. And I submit that without a purpose, our lives, our businesses get fuzzy. The lure of everything, other things, money and whatnot. And so what I suggest to my clients is well, let's start with purpose. What has God written on your heart to be first and foremost? Tie that purpose with everything you do. That's what Jesus did. Very intentional, very purposeful. Here's where people don't want to go. Tie every expenditure, every activity, especially the money, to that purpose. Bless you. Think about that a few minutes. Ask yourself the question, is this activity worthy of praise based on its source? What is the source of this activity? What is the source of this expenditure? Is it fulfilling that purpose? Let's take a minute or two, if you indulge me here. Let's get y'all active. Some of you may have one, you may not have one. I don't care. But you can voice something. It doesn't have to be, don't make it from the head, make it from the heart. Go around the table one at a time and state your purpose of your business or your life. Here's what I've discovered. I believe God designed this way. When we know one another's purpose, there is an automatic link heart to heart, love to love. There is something. You may never see this person again, but there is some factor that God has built into each one of us that when we know one another's purpose, we hear it, there is some bond. So let's take just a minute, if you will, go around the table and just share with one another what your either business purpose, if you own a business, or the life purpose is. Just a minute. Sorry to cut you short if you're still going, but I'm hoping that, no, I'm not hoping, but I'm trusting very significantly that this will be a great help for you in understanding and knowing what people at your table are all about. I highly recommend and suggest that whatever group, wherever you are, you attempt to do this. There is a bond here. Whether they're believers or not, it doesn't matter. You'll have and you'll receive a greater, deeper appreciation of who people are and what they're really about. I'm going to take one for the team here. I'm going to give CUNY a bad time. I'm going to skip what I really, really wanted to talk about. I'm going to save y'all. Well, time. Several years ago, it happened to be on Easter, I saw this picture. And for some reason, well, God really worked on my heart about resurrection. I apologize, I can't think of the name of the TV show, but a number of years ago, there was one on Sunday nights, Eastern time. It came on about 8 o'clock. It was on ABC channel, where this guy would have this team. Somebody would leave for a week, and they'd come in, all these construction workers, and totally remodel a house. It was a pretty good show, but at the end, the people would come back, the homeowners would come back, and they'd pull up, and they'd have this big bus or truck in front of the house so they couldn't see what had been done. So the owners of the home would get out, and everybody would scream and holler, said, "Move that bus." Well, that morning, early morning, when God was working on my heart about resurrection and going deeper about what it really meant, I heard, "Move that rock." We live, most of us, to some degree, and this is one of my recalibration points every morning, we still live in that prison, in that tomb. The door is open. Jesus did that for us. And so for me, my wife and I talk about it, move that rock. In other words, we're being like these slaves or serfs. We're not being whom God created us to be, and it's just a little watchword. Move that rock. Step out of there. We're resurrected. Everything we have, every part of our business, every part of our lives has been resurrected, redeemed. I don't know if you have mantras you say to yourself. This is one of mine. Move that rock. This aspect, where I am now, has been redeemed. Am I living it? This person that I'm coming face to face with, this problem has been redeemed. Am I living through that in my business, such that one of my favorite, and Paul mentioned it last night, Exodus 8, the second or third miracle that Moses did, and the Pharaoh's magicians couldn't answer it. They said, "That's the finger of God, the Spirit and the power." We have that. And I challenge you, I invite you to come up with a mantra that in any situation, especially in the business life, this has been redeemed. I'm going to read you something. I hope it inspires you. I heard it from a pastor one day, as it has me. The resurrection is the evidence that what Jesus did on the cross was enough. The resurrection is evidence that what Jesus did on the cross is enough. Is enough for what, Larry? Whatever you need of. Because when Jesus died on Calvary, he said, "I will be gone for 3 days. But on the third day, I am coming back." Emphasis on I am. And when that rock is moved and rolled away, and I step out of that grave, you can be assured that all sins, past, present, and future, are gone forever. They're forgiven. All is restored. And all means all. If you need healing, you can have it. If you need help financially, I will arrange it. I spent 40 years. I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. You don't need to know how long I was in the enemy camp, so to speak, as a commercial loan officer. It taught me a lot. I wrote a book called Romancing the Loan. I should have put it was written by the loan arranger. That's what I was. I was a loan arranger anyway. So if you need help financially, God speaking, I'll arrange it, not Larry. If you need a touch from me, from heaven, you can have it. today because I live. I paid the penalty, I paid the sentence, I paid the price for your sin because I came back out of the grave, the tomb, and I sit at my Father's right hand, and all has been restored. Today, no matter what you're going through, no matter what you have to face, today, I am enough. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Each day, I suggest to you, is Resurrection Day. And that's the bottom line that Jesus taught me that early resurrection morning. Each day has been resurrected. I have worried. I have lost sleep. I worked for 17 banks, which is, I kept moving, but I was fired a number of times for doing what was right. When my family was young, my wife wasn't working, stuff like that. I didn't have the money, but God redeems everything. We're running short of time to get back on schedule, but I would invite you, and what I wanted to do was a short exercise again, would be to complete this sentence regarding your business life. Because Jesus is saying that, Jesus is stepping in right now. He's doing a walkabout. He's coming up to each one of us and saying, because I live, blank has been redeemed. What is it that you want, you desire, that purpose on your heart, you want redeemed, you need redeemed? Because I live, blank has been redeemed. And with that, we're almost on schedule. Thank you.
You learned from all of that.
I was afraid when they gave you, John, that microphone. You're going to stump me. The biggest one is that, for me, was that in the world system, as Bill talked about, there's a lot of power at the top. And it's up here instead of coming underneath the individuals. It's not a team. And that's the biggest issue that I ran into, was all the egotistical powers and power that people were after. And I heard it every place I worked, he who has the gold rules. And they were always right. And I'm not just slamming a lot of bankers, but there's a lot of good people there. However, very power related, power based. And I never worked, though I worked with some believers, I never worked with anybody that was really diligent in taking the biblical principles into their job, into that corner office regarding money and finances. So that was good. Thank you.
Anything else? Anybody else? All right. Thanks, Larry. That was great. All right. We want to invite